if we call ourselves children of God, right? That means God is our Father, right? And that means we should listen to his voice. And oftentimes, as we see, we allow our political voices, those in our ear, to become the ones who start leading and guiding us and directing us.
Step under the juniper tree, where we engage in captivating conversations with your favorite faith leaders. Together, we'll unravel the enthralling mysteries of where the threads of the human experience intertwine with the fabric of faith, mental health, and leadership. Join us for an exhilarating journey of discovery and connection as we explore the beautiful intersections between the faith and the human experience. Under the Juniper Tree.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Juniper Tree podcast. This is your host, Coach Shamar. We are talking about the pulpit, preaching, and politics. That's our series that we're working on right now, because we know that there's a lot of believers out there who are trying to answer the question of how do I function? How do I walk in this world where I have to vote, I should vote, and figure out not only who I should vote for, but should we talk about politics in church? Should we talk about it at work? Like how do we navigate these waters? And our guest today is going to help us figure out how to navigate these waters. Today we have a brother with us who is a pastor. He's a practitioner. He's also a professor. He's also the founder of the House of Hope, which is a 501c3 organization that focuses on helping people in disenfranchised neighborhoods find resources, but also gives them the opportunity to give back and be a part of the solution in their own neighborhood. Our guest today, he also teaches leadership courses at Gordon Conwell and Hood Theological Seminary. He also works closely with doctoral candidates in developing their prospectus for their final doctoral project. He is a U.S. Air Force veteran, and for the last 16 years, he has been the pastor, the preacher, the leading speaker at First Missionary Baptist Church in Concord, North Carolina. And I will point out that North Carolina is a little bit of a purple state right now, and Concord is kind of turning purple. So he's in a very interesting place where even the place that he preaches could turn the tide of the election. And he's in a place where he has to kind of speak to the people around what they should do around this idea of voting and God's voice and the job that we have to do as citizens. So I want to introduce to you Dr. Rhedrick.
For having me here today.
Absolutely. Excited to have you. Looking forward to our conversation. Looking forward to talking with you and just, you enlightening us on, how we should navigate these interesting times, these interesting waters, just this place of, for a lot, it's a place of uncertainty.
It is. Yeah. It really is. And it will be even after the election.
That's a good point. Yeah. You jumping in already. Well, look, listen, before I know you've been working on a series, His Voice, Your Vote. His Voice, Your Vote. I know you've been working on that series. You've been preaching on that series. You've brought some guests in. I'm curious for you, what made you feel like, what kind of gave you the unction to say, hey, I need to speak on this idea of voting and God's voice in it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Shamar. Oftentimes we as preachers do one of, I say, two or three things. We either go silent and just act like these things aren't going on, or we'll jump in the battle and try to sway people one side to the other, try to claim a political position through the pulpit. And I says, but really, I think what we're missing is what would God have us to do? And so that was the impetus behind my coming up. I didn't say my coming up, being led to preach on the series, because we didn't see a lot of that. It was mostly one or the other. And so it really required me to be thoughtful and prayerful about what would God have us to do. And so when we understand God and his desires for us, he wants us to hear his voice.
Yeah.
Right. In every area of our lives. It's just not in politics, in every area of our lives. And when we make a decision, every decision we make is a vote, whether it's buying a car, buying a house, marrying someone, taking a new job. And so what's the difference in the political arena? And when you look at politics, Jesus was always in the middle of all of that, and he handled it gracefully and he handled it soundly. And so that's where I tried to lean in.
Yeah, just based on the way you talk about it and how smoothly you flow about it,
Mm-hmm.
I almost want to ask you, hey, what is the answer? What is the silver bullet? Who should we vote for, and how should we vote to make everything just go our way? But I know that it's not that simple. And I've listened to your messages. First of all, let me say, you are a funny guy. I know we're talking real serious right now, but I have been listening to your sermons in this series that you've been talking about, his voice, your vote, and you are a funny guy. You are hilarious up there. Just smooth with it, but still you keep some humor in the conversation, you
Well,
know.
yeah, and thank you for that, Shamar. But I'm a firm believer that we serve such an awesome God. Church is the last place you should come to and it'd be boring. And I believe we serve a God of humor, and that we need to look at things in light of how serious they really aren't. Because most things that we make really serious, God is just probably sitting up there laughing. He says they're worrying about all the wrong things. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, so for that. So my thing is to make certain that people can hear the message. And of course, sometimes and the humor just comes naturally. It's something I often plan, but it's part of how God has equipped me. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, in this teaching, in this series that you've been working on, I know you brought guests in as well.
Mhm.
What has this series been about? Like, how would you sum it up beyond the title?
Yeah, it is just really the title. I can't stray far from it, Shamar. It's really to get people to say, hey, if we call ourselves children of God, right? That means God is our Father, right? And that means we should listen to His voice. And oftentimes, as we see, uh, we allow our political voices, those in our ear, to become the ones who start leading and guiding us and directing us. And so then it became like, I don't think that's what God would really have us to do. I don't think He's outside of politics. And so it was really to just draw us back to our center, where we're allowing our faith to lead our politics instead of politics leading our faith. And one of our guests, Justin Giboney, of the AND campaign, I think he said it well. He says, if you look at many Christians who have changed their views on issues that are moral issues, that if they have strayed away from where they stood biblically 5, 10, or 15 years ago, it wasn't anything they learned new theologically. It was something they probably bought into politically and have allowed the culture to move us away from that. And that really resonated with me, because as I speak to people of faith and I see that they are more what I call a culture Christian, I'll say, well, when did you start believing this? Or when did you start thinking this way? And more times than not, it has nothing to do with the scriptures. It has everything to do with what's happening in the culture, which then tells me someone else is in your ear.
Mm, that's good. That's good. I have to ask because you mentioned Gibney and you talking about politics, culture, and stuff like that. There have been I have heard,
Mm-hmm.
see, YouTube really has opened the door to so many things. You can't say something at your home church, if you will, and no
Right.
one else sees it, right? So the message that you're preaching, and I don't necessarily mean you, but I mean in general, the
I
message
know
that
what
we
you
are preaching is now a message for the world versus a
mean.
message for Concord or Charlotte
Hmm.
or Knoxville, Tennessee, or wherever you're at. I have heard preachers say, one comes to mind in right in my head right now. I think you and I talked about him a while ago.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you are a Democrat,
Hmm.
you cannot come to this church. As a matter of fact, get out now is kind of where that whole sermon went. And
Yeah.
I've heard preachers say, if you're a Republican,
Hmm.
then you can't be a part of this congregation
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
Jesus is love and the Republicans are not love. The people of
Hmm.
the Republicans are not love. I'm just
Hmm.
curious, your view on this topic, this
Yeah.
issue. Does Jesus have a party? D- does does God have a party? Is he rooting for an elephant or a donkey? Just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we can find the answer to that squarely in the book of Joshua, right? In the 5th chapter, I think it's verses 13 through 15. And Joshua is getting ready to go to the battle of Jericho. I don't know if you remember the story, but on his way to the battle, he was confronted with this ominous presence, right? And when he saw it, the Bible refers to it as the angel of God. Well, of course, Joshua's first encounter, he didn't know it was the angel of God. He just knew that it was this awesome figure that was standing before him, and he needed to know whose side this awesome figure was on. And he says, "Hey," and I'm paraphrasing here now, "are you for the folks of Jericho or are you for the Israelites?" Right? That was his question. So he said, "Are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? What side are you on?" And the answer was, "I'm here representing the Lord." You hear that? And so clearly he was telling Joshua, it's not about whose side I'm on. The question is, whose side are you on?
That's good. That's
And,
good.
and and so what we have to realize is that in all parties, whether it's Republican, Democrat, constitutionalist, Green Party, Libertarian, because we forget about all the others that are out there, that there are probably in all of them people who declare themselves to be Christians.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's good. I was going to say that still doesn't tell me which party I need to select, but I guess that's okay. And I guess that's your point.
But
You're
that's the
saying,
point. That's the point.
yeah.
And here's the thing, because once you start selecting a party, right, then that becomes an idol. You're holding it up as the be all to know all. Here's the thing. We could sit here and find out that there's right answers and wrong answers on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Right. We can pull up different topics and say, okay, where does this party stand on this and where this party stands on that? And this is what happens is what we find out is one party, and this is why they call them left and right, because they're leaning too far one way or the other. And it was a battle that Jesus got in with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? The Sanhedrins, right? One party wanted to pull him this way and another party wanted to pull him this way. But he was always, what did he say? That people were amazed because he never solely landed in either camp. He was always standing on the word of God. Even when he says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. Most people, when they look at that, Shamar, look at Caesar over here and God over here as though they're equal. But when Jesus said that, the word he uses is render, it means to someone over you, right? And so really what he's saying is, okay, you can give this guy down here any and everything he wants as long as you don't violate this person up here.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, we have our order incorrect because we're over here.
Right. We want you to put God over here and your party over here and, and choose it that way. No, they all need to remember that they're all subject to God and it all needs to be like this. And so for that reason, you really shouldn't lean totally with any one party. I don't recommend anyone vote a straight ticket. I can tell you that. Right. I really believe that you should look at the person and their platform. And if the person on one side or the other is better for that particular platform, then go with it. And look more at the person and their character and what their belief systems are and what they stand on. And oftentimes when you get this, and I see it, people will block you. I've had folks say, if you vote for so-and-so, I'm blocking you. Right? I'm not talking to you. Yeah, and that's not healthy. If if they say if you vote Republican or if you vote Democrat, get out of this church or don't come here. No, there are good people and bad people on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah. So I'm curious because you live. Well, I'm not sure if you live in Concord, but I know you preach in Concord. You pastor a church in Concord. So where do the people lean in your church? Is it both? Is it
No.
Where do you find? Where do they lean?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a couple of descriptions here, and then I'll come to your answer to your question. Let's first just talk about where our church physically is in the city of Concord, okay? Where we're physically located. We're located within a half-mile radius of our church in the middle of Politics, because downtown is less than a half mile away. Prosperity, homes that would sell for $1 million or half mile the other way, and poverty, people living in government supported housing and homelessness, all
Mhm.
within a half. You can drive through our neighborhood and you can see signs for Republicans and Democrats all around us, right? So we're right in the throes of all of that as you speak. But if I were to take a poll of our congregation, I would say the majority of them would lean or are registered. Let's go that way. The majority of them would be registered Democrats. However, conversations I've been having is that a lot of them are having a problem with the platform, especially since I've been preaching, right,
Mhm.
about some platforms that are on that side, right? Some of the things that they promote and that they support. In fact, we did deeper dives on Wednesday nights, and I think you might have heard those promoted, when you watched the series. And we actually went down deeper. And most of the time, when we just put the moral position of where a person stood, most of the time it wouldn't line up with their parties.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. So when you start to unpack it, when you start to
Mm-hmm.
dig a little deeper, the sticker that they wear on their head, the sticker that we wear on our head, whether
Mm-hmm.
it be a donkey or an elephant, doesn't line
Mm-hmm.
up with what we actually
Doesn't
believe.
That's correct. And so you have this where you have this party identification, right? And that's really, if we really want to get into it, we don't want to say it a lot, but that's getting into nationalism when you're starting with this party identification and you intertwine your faith in it. That's syncretism, right? Where you're holding both of these values equally, but they're opposing.
Yeah.
And that becomes difficult. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask because you're using all the tisms, and I know
Yeah.
you're a college professor. Everybody on my podcast that's listening may not understand all the tisms. So break
Yeah.
down
So break it down. So yes, syncretism. What word do you hear in that?
sync.
Right, there it is. All right. It's synchronizing two opposing beliefs and carrying them equally. You
Mhm.
equally believe this and you equally believe that, but they're opposing beliefs. How do you do that? All right. And that's what's happening, right? People will say, well, I'm holding to this party, but I believe this. I'm going like, okay, how can you carry both of those?
Hmm. So like a level of cognitive dissonance just happening, kind of walking in that level of cognitive dissonance is what you're saying.
Yeah, right. Or compartmentalizing, where you want to separate your faith over here and put your politics over here. And even a lot of people in politics that say, well, you can't mix the two. That's what I
Yeah.
believe. This is my faith and this is my politics. And that's exactly what the enemy would have you to do, to compromise yourself.
Mm.
When really the two go together, right?
Yeah. So you're saying that there should be a level of alignment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
alignment like this or alignment like this?
Well, it should be an alignment like this, one on top of the other, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Your faith has to be. I'm a card player. For those who play cards, right? You're not going to like the word I use, but it's what it's called in card. Your faith should trump your policy
Yeah.
or your
Okay.
politics. Okay. So and that's what the render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and under God what is God's is all about. Someone has to be the final authority.
Got you.
Okay. And so we need to have that.
Hey, it's not every day that you get to hear content like this, but every time it comes out, you can be a part of it. If you click the subscribe button, you will be the first to know when we put out new content. And if you like it, it'll help this content go all over the world and bless lots of people. And if you share it, you can bless someone that you know, I don't know, friend, family member, maybe even your pastor or your faith leader. And so we want to change the culture. Help us be a part of it.
So, one of the things that I hear when I talk to believers, either on one side or the other, right, or independents for that matter, you kind of hear them talk about the things that are on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Abortion is on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
LGBTQI is on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
How do
Don't
you
forget
see
the
that? What'd you say?
Don't forget the plus, A plus.
Excuse me, plus LGBTQIA plus.
Right.
Are those the only two things on the ballot? What do you see on the ballot when we talk about voting?
Yeah, so you definitely have that, and then you have the economic policies that are on the ballot. You have immigration that's on the
Hmm.
ballot, and then you have just the cost of living, just trying to make it from day to day that's on the ballot. And so when you look at these things again, no party is going to have it 100% right. And what you have to then choose, right, is what are you willing to give up and what to get what you feel you most need.
Hmm.
That can be different for different people, right? Some person can say, well, I don't care about the abortion issue just because I don't. I care more about this, right?
Okay.
All right. All right. And so then if that's why you're voting for that person, that you know what you're sacrificing, what you're willing to give away in order to get what you think is most important. And this is why it's not as simple as saying, well, vote for this person or that person. And this is why you shouldn't just go right down and vote a ticket, because certain people may hold certain things that you hold near and dear. And each person has a place where they stand on that, right? And so they may say, I don't care about who plays in sports. I don't care if a man and a woman are both in the same competition. If this person is going to give me $50,000 to start my business, that's who I want because I need that 50 to start my business, right? Or
Yeah.
another person might say, hey, I think it's just totally wrong, all right, to let everyone come into the country because they're taking resources from me that I need. And so I don't care if they're crazy and they're a womanizer and a misogynist and all of that. I don't care if they're going to make certain that I get all of my benefits and I'm going to get this. All right, then you have to start saying, okay, all right, that's what you have. And if you look at it from a theological standpoint, God used heinous people to bring out the good and things that he wanted to have happen. So what we often forget about is the sovereignty of God. God can use a wicked person as leader, right? To bring his people back to him.
So okay, with that in mind,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be careful here because I want to make sure I'm an independent. I'm
Mm-hmm.
registered Democrat because when I was 18, even before I was 18, I was black, and you know,
Same here.
bl-
Same
black
here.
yeah, black 18-year-old, you register as Democrat. That's the rules.
Because
And
that was the rules, right?
yeah,
And I'm like yourself. I'm pretty much independent as well.
yeah. So I want to be careful as we put this out and sound bites come out that
Mm-hmm.
I don't frame the question in a way that creates a selection over here or a selection over there.
Right.
But I do want to ask you, because you talked about cost of living and immigration. You've also talked
Mm-hmm.
about uh, political party here, faith here. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
for most LGBTQIA plus
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
faith issue, right?
Right.
For
Right.
most, or like you can find that pretty clear in scripture.
Mm-hmm.
For most, the issue of abortion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty, for the most part, pretty clear in scripture about
Mm-hmm.
death and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
this cost of living and immigration, are those faith issues or are those just politic issues?
No, everything boils out. Everything you can't really separate your faith from your life. Again, you can find in places in Scripture where the cost of living was exorbitant, and God can bring about a revival within in a city or an area, and the cost of living comes down, right? And
Mhm.
and so again, when we try to separate our faith from what we're living in life, I think we get in a lot of trouble, and I think that's what most of us do often, Shamar, is that we
Yeah.
try to rank the two. When again, we got to go back. One's got to be on top of the other, right? Because we know. Just think about it. In a biblical community, if everybody were to give just 10%, I don't care what they're making, right?
Hmm.
If everybody was faithful in giving their 10%, we could solve most all financial woes, right? Because there'll be enough. Because he says, put food in my house, right? Be a storehouse, right? That there'll be an abundance. He says, I'll open up the windows of heaven. So what he's saying is, guess what? It won't matter what the economy is.
Mm. Yeah.
It won't matter what groceries cost because there'll be enough resources right here to meet all your needs
In the storehouse.
in the storehouse.
Gotcha.
All right. And I don't know if I heard the question,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. That definitely answers the question because so many things. I think so many times we look at what's on the ballot as
Mhm.
what said politician is saying is on the ballot. We take it for face value.
Right.
They said this is on the ballot. They said this is what they're going to do. These are the issues that are on the ballot, but we don't look at it from our faith perspective of love is on the ballot. I believe love is on the ballot. Would you
Absolutely.
agree with that?
I would. And again, that's why my title of my series was His Voice, because basically what is happening is you're listening to all those other voices in your head.
Yeah.
All right. And you're not letting his voice be the supreme voice.
Got you.
And so you're focusing on the voice that you hear. Can I use my theological imagination? Let's go all the way back to the garden.
Sure.
That's what happened to Adam and Eve. They got another voice in their head. You don't need God. You can figure all this out by yourself. Same thing. That's what we're doing now. We're trying to figure out all of this by ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, you talked about culture, you talked about voices, and you talked about us hearing different voices that have taken us away from what we believe. Cultural Christian. That's been
oxymoron.
Yeah. Some would say.
Yeah.
So help us understand, what is a cultural Christian and how does that work?
Yeah, I think again, like you heard me say, oxymoron. We use that, and again, I don't think you see that anywhere in the scriptures, right? Jesus said, "I wish you were hot or cold," right? So, culture Christian means you're part culture, you're part Christian. That means you're lukewarm. That means you're over here a little bit, you're over here a little bit. You're not standing anywhere solidly. And he's saying, no, I would rather you be either for me or against me. And so we have a lot of what we would say culture Christians, but really there are people who are trying to be Christian when it's convenient and be in the culture when it's popular.
Got you.
Okay.
Yeah. So help me unpack that a little more, because I think if anybody was watching this, they would, whether we talk about ethnicity, most people would say both you and I are Black, right? We're both somewhere above the age of 40. We're both veterans. We're both in the South. There's a list of things that we are, that are true, that have defined how we look at the world. And then with all of those things that define us, we're also Christian.
Right.
So how do we? Go ahead, I'll let you.
Yeah, I would say that differently. I would say they're Christian and we're all of these things. And therein lies the difference, okay? Because let's say it like this. I heard it said that when you ask a person what their worldview is, right? Because everyone has a worldview. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, absolutely.
Everyone sees right. But what is their worldview, or how they come about their worldview? And I heard it says that a person's worldview is how they put their world together.
Yeah.
Okay. And so all the pieces that you layered for us, right? Am I a veteran that's a Christian, or am I a Christian veteran? Right? What am I first? What am I foremost? Okay. What leads me? So in your worldview, what leads you to make the decisions that you make? If you make a decision because you're a veteran first, all right, then you're a veteran, right? That happens to be a Christian, right?
Okay.
But your worldview is wrapped around how you see veterans are supposed to be treated, or whatever that position is. All right. As a Black person, I can make all of my decision based on my ethnicity, right? Black folks are this, Black folks are this, Black folks are this, right? Okay.
Got you.
So now my worldview is based on my race.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. Or I can I need policies and procedures that are going to protect my Social Security and things of that nature. So now I'm making policies or positions based on my age.
Okay.
Because all of those are shaping my worldview, right? And so then at the end of the day, if there's a conflict, and it's okay to have those conflicts, and this is where I go back again, but if there's a conflict between veterans policies and the scriptures, which way am I going to lean the most?
So,
Go ahead.
in what you're sharing, I think in the substratum of what you're saying is we have to pay attention to policies.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
We do.
because you're talking about when we have conflict between what this part of my identity that's back here and my faith, which my being a Christian, which is up here, right? We should go based on the policy, not based on necessarily the personality or who we like.
That's correct.
Or who has prettier hair or whatever.
Right. Or who's more eloquent in their speech, or who, and all of those kinds of things. And so, and it becomes hard because the hard part is that we don't want to study the word long enough or hard enough to see where that should land. In fact, we would rather someone just tell us, well, Pastor, tell me what you think. No, I'm not going to tell you what I think. Right? That's letting you off the hook. Do the work. Oh, that's too hard. Yeah, it is hard. But once you learn, then you own it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where we started, right? I said, Pastor, hey, can you tell me who to vote for? I just want to let me get the quick answer. Help me out.
Get the quick answer. Yeah, help me out. And that lets you off the hook.
Yeah. So then I'm not responsible for who I put there.
Who you voted for. Right. So even if you voted for and said, man, well, that's who Pastor told me to vote for. I knew I should have done something. No. All right. If you do the work, then you own that.
That's good. That's good. I think it's hard for us to own who we vote for. Should we be proud of our vote? Like, how does that work? Because I see people voting now. I just joined TikTok. We put our podcast on TikTok and things like that. So I get to see a lot more of the world of TikTok that maybe I want to see sometimes. But I see people, I voted and I'm proud. Here's who I voted for. I voted and I'm proud. And here's who I voted for. Should we be proud of the candidate we voted for? Knowing that in some respects, we are compromising. And I use that word respectfully, compromising one thing for a different position based on our faith, based on our beliefs, based on who we believe is the best candidate. Should we be proud?
Well, I think we have to be careful with the word proud in a thing that is not a pride that's puffed up. Okay. In a sense that we believe we've done something better than someone else. Okay. Confident that the person is going to do what you voted for them to do. That's a form of, confidence, or proud that I voted for this person who's going to do what I hope they're going to do. Then I guess that's okay. But to think that they're going to be the end all to be all, I think that's wrong, because they're not. I mean, regardless of which side wins, they're fallen beings, right?
Yeah,
they're both fallen creatures, so they're gonna have some shortcomings, and so don't walk around so prideful that he's right or she's right, and they're gonna get it all right. I think that's not a good posture to have. I think it should be, this is who I'm praying for, and I'm praying that they would do what God would have them to do. And even with their shortcomings, that they could even see the light and change their policy. But see, most of them are so bought into their politics that even if they learn a different way, they can't turn, because they got so many hands that have supported them, that they owe so many favors that they don't even own themselves.
That's a great point. Yeah. That's a great point. And I've never heard the idea of being proud of who I voted for, and like lining that up with the idea of being puffed up, right? Which Scripture, of course, tells us not to do, but being puffed up. That's interesting. Just never heard it put that way. We have candidates every year. It is, I know. I think I first voted with Bush, maybe. But even before that, and I served in the military, so I got to see a little bit more of the candidates' policies, many candidates' policies in different ways. But every year we have candidates who are Christians. We have candidates who are not Christians. We have candidates who quote Scripture, and some who choose to not quote it, but know it.
Right.
How do we I guess maybe pull apart those thin pieces of paper that
Mm-hmm.
divide cultural Christian from
Mm-hmm.
believer, because I wasn't around for Jimmy Carter. I read history books on him, but as far as I know, Jimmy Carter was a believer. Like he was a like
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've been around a little longer than I have, but he was a like a Christian believer kind of guy. But
Yeah,
we
he
have
was one. Yeah,
Mhm.
he was one that, as some would say, that he tried to take the Bible to Washington and apply it, right? And some history has marked him as probably the worst president the United States has ever had, right? But I say the verdict isn't out yet. History hasn't proved itself, and until we get to the end of time, because a lot of times when a person's judged on their presidency or any office, it's based on how the economy did, right, and how
Mhm.
successful were, right? So if that becomes your measuring stick, he might have been the worst president. All right. But if it comes down to being a humanitarian, how he wanted to see people treated, then when we look over in the Lamb's Book of Life, he may have more written by his name that he did for people than any government did. Okay. So yeah. Going back now, your question again. I'm sorry, I forgot
Sure.
what was your question again?
Yeah, so we have presidents or presidential
Right,
candidates
right.
or governor candidates, mayor candidate, all kinds of candidates.
Who claim?
Some of them
Mhm.
are have confessed that they're Christianity, and we can argue whether we believe that or not. That's a whole nother thing. But
Right.
how do we theoretically,
Mhm.
the person who is,
Mhm.
hey, I'm a Christian, I love God, I love people, right? Theoretically, that
Mhm.
person should create the best policies that would move us forward according to our Christian worldview. Theoretically, how do we sort
Theoretic.
through that?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
we don't know if it's cultural Christianity. We don't know if it's
Right.
their name is written in the book of life, or
Right.
if their name is just written somewhere else.
Right. 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 Now, again, this would require deeper work, which most of us won't do or don't have time to do, is to talk to people who really know them, right? I mean, so if you really want to find out, I mean, you got folks who profess Christianity here in our church,
Hmm.
right? They're not running for any office. But if you go ask their neighbors, right, and go see how they really live, you're like, well, he might go to that church, but I don't know if he's a Christian or not. So the answer to your question is, from the way we are right now, we can only know as much as we is published about them, right?
Yeah.
Is as what we see, unless we go do some of the real tough work and investigate that person as an individual and find out more about it. And even then we can still get it wrong. All right. Just know that we can get it wrong. So then again, at the end of the day, you have to make your decision based on the information you have as being the best information that you have. And then if you vote for them and they win, then it's your responsibility to make certain that you follow up to see if they kept the promises that they made.
Hmm. Got you. You
So
know,
you hold them. Yeah, so you have to hold them accountable, which again most of us won't do after the election's over, and all the promises that were made. Uh, how many of us are going to keep a scorecard? You know when that scorecard is going to come out when the next election rolls around.
yeah, that's about accurate. That is usually when we determine if that person was faithful to what they said or not. What you're saying kind of reminds me of a very simple system I like to use for to
Mm-hmm.
go into restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I'm bougie, but just because I work hard for my money and I want to make sure that I'm
Mm-hmm.
spending it right. I try to go to restaurants that are 4.5 and above, whether it's a diner or
Right.
a 3-star restaurant, really nice restaurant, because it's about the people that
Mm-hmm.
are who have been there, who have visited it, maybe more
Right.
than once. What
Right.
is their review of that
Right.
individual, right? The neighbor that's
Right.
next door, like you said. What is their belief? Maybe somebody who was in their cabinet. Maybe more than one person that was in their cabinet. What is
Right.
their belief around that person and their experience with that
Their
person?
experience. Right. So you're trying to peel back that onion. You're trying to pull back that Wizard of Oz curtain to see who's really behind there, because you know what you're getting on the air. And so yeah, but that's hard work. But that's some of the work we should do, and some of the stuff. And fortunately and unfortunately, however you want to look at it, with social media and all of that, you can follow what they post and what they write. Stuff that we may not see, but it requires a little harder work. And oftentimes you're hoping that whomever you're voting for is going to pull up that stuff and put it out there. But we also know that when they do, most of the time they only pull out the sound bite.
Yeah.
Right. And so then, what I tell people, okay, when you hear that sound bite, see if you can track and go hear the whole message.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then you might find out that they said something before that and after that, but all you got is this piece right here.
So go back and pull the tape is what you're saying. Go back and find
get the receipts. As the young folks said, get the receipts.
Yeah. Receipts matter. Receipts will tell you where you're spending it. Receipts will tell you where you've been. What was important to you. They used to say in church, we vote with our checkbook, right? We vote what's important with our checkbook, and we get a receipt from that, if you will.
That's correct. Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Well, Pastor, I know we've been on here for a while. I want to maybe put a bow on this by asking you. I know you're in a purple state. You're in a purple city. You're right in the middle of, a lot of different influences and a lot of different political bends. There's people out there that are still making up their mind. Maybe some who have made up their mind, but are still a little undecided. For that believer who's still undecided, trying to figure it out, because this podcast will come out probably before the election. What would you tell that believer who's still on the fence? Maybe they're leaning one way or the other, but they're still not sure what they're going to write on that ballot, whether it be for presidential, mayoral,
all the way down,
any of the issues, all the way down. What, besides don't vote one way all the way, what would you tell them?
Yeah. All right. So whether they're voting from the outhouse to the White House is what I said, whatever's in between, I would tell them, don't become so socially and politically influenced, right, that they're of no heavenly influence. Or don't become so don't have any political or social influence that they don't become any heavenly good, if that makes any sense. I'm saying, so one of the things the Bible talks about our being is resident aliens.
Yeah.
Wrestle with that right there, resident aliens. And if we can embrace that and allow our heavenly focus to influence our social and political positions, I think you can then make a better decision. I think, again, I go back to leading, allow what you understand the scriptures are saying. Don't worry about trying to vote for who's going to win. I would say that, okay? Don't vote against someone either. Look at what do you think God is having you really to vote for? Because at the end, he controls the king's heart. He's the ultimate, your leader, right? And so don't become so socially and politically influenced that you lose your biblical focus, your heavenly focus. That's what I would tell them. Yeah, that don't allow all of this that you hearing. In fact, I had in our congregation, and I would tell people to do this these last 3 to 4 days. Fast from the media.
Now that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, fast from the media, right? And if you want to do some specific digging on a person, like we talked about, some research, do some research, but get the media out of your ear.
Yeah.
And spend some time praying and listening to God's voice.
Yeah.
So that when you walk into that ballot box, and when you walk out and you pull whatever lever or you click whatever person, that you can walk out with a peace that you know that you've done what God has wanted you to do. And then you don't even worry about who wins.
That's good. But yeah, it sounds like the peace only comes, though, when you've prayed, when you fasted, when you've turned off the media, and when you've done the hard work of doing your research. And then comes the peace.
Yes.
But not just peace because you voted, but peace because you did the work.
That's right. Yeah. Put the work in.
Yeah.
And then if that person fails you, then you can say, okay, I must have missed something. But you didn't just do it willy-nilly, and you didn't do it because you were so socially or politically influenced that you just said, well, I heard them say this and I heard them say that, and you didn't do any of your homework to find out, all right, was that the whole story? Did I hear the whole story? Did I get it all? So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. That's good advice. I appreciate that. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you kind of sharing with us your thoughts, even though you wouldn't tell us who to vote for, because I was going to write it down, because I know you hear from God. So I was going to
That's
just
it.
write it down and take your word for it. And then if it went wrong, I was going to give you a call and just say,
That's right.
Pastor, listen,
That's
Pastor,
right. My prophecy was wrong. My prophecy was wrong. That's right. That's it.
Yeah, I appreciate you not telling us who, but telling us how to get there,
Yeah.
and giving us advice as believers, to just really help us navigate these challenging times, difficult waters that are to come now, but also knowing that the difficult challenges are not over, and these are really lessons for life, not just the election. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for having me. And it was an honor to be here. And last but not least, just remember that God is sovereign. He's still on the throne. So regardless of what happens next week, the world isn't going to fall apart. If it comes to an end, it will be because of what God is going to do, not because who wins the White House.
Amen. I appreciate that. Well, thank you for joining us on the Juniper Tree with Coach Shamar.
Hey, if you've gotten to this point in this content, then you probably like what we're sharing. And if you want to hear more, I need you to like it, I need you to subscribe to it, and I need you to share it with a friend. We want to do great content, and we want to share conversations with people that you're interested in hearing from. But the only way we can do that is if you help us out. So subscribe, like, and share. Do it now. And let's get this out there to people who it can bless. Take care.